Okay. Well, Brulé is the name of our tribe, first of all. It is. It's a tribe.
Okay.
It is. And
Now your Lakota, which we understand is a Sioux, is that a part of the Sioux, or
Yeah.
they're different Sioux?
I always well, there are. I always explain it like this. We refer to ourselves as Lakota, but the English word is Sioux. It's the same thing. So if you're Sioux or Lakota, it's just the English version, or it's the indigenous version. It's the same thing. Now, both of those, either one, let's go with Lakota, because that's how we refer to ourselves. That is divided into 7 different, let's call them bands of the Lakota, or bands of the Sioux. You could think of them as subcategories or subgroups or divisions. That's where Brulé comes in. The Brules or the Brulés. And I think that it's fair to say that either Brule or Brulé today is interchangeable.
Okay.
It's just a matter of if you want to put the hyphen on it or if you want to ignore the hyphen.
The accent aigu.
That's it, yes. You got it.
Yeah.
And it is indeed a French word.
Yes.
But it
as
has
in
been...
Paul LaRoche.
Yes.
Paul the Rock.
It's exactly right.
Yeah, I lived in France for 5 years. So,
yes. Very few people know that. You're one of the few over the years that... So it is, the word itself has just been kind of abused a little bit by us here, and we've dropped the French part of it and just turns to Brule. As a matter of fact, if you and I were to walk into our tribal headquarters today, the sign would say Lower Brule, Sioux Tribe of South Dakota. So even at home, they don't even use that.
They don't use the accent aigu.
No, but I have reinvented it because I want it to be, it's out there, it's in books, we have it in literature, and I think we can both agree that it rolls off the tongue a little better. Brulé does than Brule.
Yeah, like cafe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've used it it's from the very beginning on. And it allows me to tell the story, and it allows me to talk about our tribe. It's opened up many doors.
I haven't lived in France for a long time, so I'm racking my brain. What does brûlé mean?
Burnt.
Huh. Okay.
Like creme brulee.
Yeah.
And there's a story behind that.
It's been 30 years since I lived there. That's the problem.
Well, anyway, now the Brulés are one of the 7 groups. Yes. Well,
describing the land?
Well, I'm going to go back. Yeah, I'll come back to that. There's 7 groups. So Brulé is one of the 7. Oglala would be another one of the 7.
Oh, yeah.
The Oglalas, you certainly heard of them. They're the folks from Pine Ridge. And Hunkpapa is a very well-known band of the Lakota.
Can you spell that for me?
Hunkpapa. That's pretty close.
Oglala is Oglalah.
That's it. Yeah. And there's others, but we'll go with that for right now. It's fair to say that is how they're divided up, and it's a division. It's a geographical division where those groups of us, the Brules, are in like an example is we're in central South Dakota, and the Oglalas are down in the southwest part of South Dakota. That's how so it's a geographical division. Now we'll come back to the word Brule or Brulé. The name came to us from French Canadian, let's say, friends of ours. Our tribes were always been close to the border of Canada and the U.S. And so over the years, we have developed a friendship actually with the French Canadian people, traders, trappers, so on and so forth. And in earlier times, we called ourselves Sikanju. Now, I'll spell it, but I may not get this right. You may want to reference this on the internet. Sicanjue. I believe it's something like that.
SIC.
Yeah, Sicanjue. But we'll have to Google that in. But anyway, this is what before we were the Brulés, we were the Sikanju. Oh. And that was our name for ourselves because we were... If you just roll with this translation, it'll make sense. But the translation is the burnt thighs.
The burnt
thighs, like
the burnt. Oh, yeah.
And that was a name that we earned, hundreds of years ago because our young warriors would carry women and children through prairie fires. To their safety, and in so doing, their legs would become burnt. Now the French saw this, and observed it and knew that we had this name Sikanju and asked what it meant, and their translation was burnt, the French. So to this day, that name has stuck with us more than anything else. So we are the Brulés. We're also the Sikanjus, if you go back into earlier times. But that's just a little trivia about that name. It is kind of weird. It's a little, and it's a little interesting.
It's very, of course, as a person who writes stories, it's a great story. And I think that stories are very much your historical oral tradition.
That's correct. That's correct. We will say that a lot of the history has been passed along orally.
And if you need to take that, I'd be glad to step up.
Well, just put everything on hold here until we're done. You've got my total attention.
Okay, appreciate it.
That's all right. Yes, the storytelling, and to this day, I think that you will find that the elders will still make a point telling a story. Mm-hmm. And it's just something that still is passed along. When I first went home, I told a little story off stage that you ask somebody a question, instead of a direct answer, they'll give you a little story. And it's quite common. It's not every day, every place,
Yeah, it's kind of happening right now.
But it does. It still goes on that way. Yeah. You'll ask something and there's no answer. There's a pause, and then get this little story. If you think about it, the answer's in that story. And that's been taught to them from young children on. It's still a good way to make a point.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, maybe this is all in the paperwork that I'm going to get from your wife, but the music is awesome.
Well, thank you.
And I asked, and you write all this music, and this is, you're a powerful musician. Well, just powerful.
Well, thank you.
And powerful music, and we were talking it out, me and the people I was with, and the influences that we could hear and everything. But the rhythm that you all bring to it just takes it into your own category for sure, your own sound. But what is your background, and how did you come to that? Were you had to have been a musician for years, because it's a very mature music too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's a wonderful, kind compliment. I did start out music as a young boy at the ripe early age of 6, 7 years old. Yeah. My first instrument was the accordion. Uh-huh. It wasn't a very popular instrument, but my dad was into that kind of music. Uh-huh. And so I learned the keyboard by the accordion. Uh-huh. I ditched the instrument before I was 10 because it just was kind of comical to my friends.
Yeah.
But I soon turned to the piano and the organ. I started getting into rock bands about at the age of 14. And it just went off the chart from that point on. It was just music was very important to me. And my parents supported that. That was a key in this whole journey. They supported it 100%. As a matter of fact, I can remember them saying that they knew as long as us kids were rehearsed in the basement that we were doing something constructive while other kids were out partying and carousing. And we used to practice and rehearse almost every night of the week. Back in those days, it was just kind of a little obsession. But there was a love for music. They did start, and I think it's probably fair to say that I grew up and I really started to embrace music in the 60s. So yeah, I think I could start right off with the Beatles.
Yeah.
And I still somewhere in my archives still have my 45 of "I Want to Hold Your Hand."
Yes.
And all the way up, I had a tendency to lean more towards the rock side as I got a little older. It's just something that I was fascinated with. So I enjoyed the heavier, the little more powerful, rock style as opposed to the poppier stuff. But I loved it all. As the years went by, I had opportunity to perform in everything from rock bands to country bands. I was even in a polka band for 2.5 years. Really, really different. Just many different types of music that I've come to appreciate that later on in life.
So you were a professional musician for many years.
No, I'm going to back up there. I was never professional. In other words, I could never survive off of music alone. I tried.
Yeah.
But it was always just a hobby.
Yeah.
That my parents supported. And later, after I was married to my wonderful wife, she supported it. And eventually the kids supported it. But it was always an adversary because it was... I took plunges into the world of music and just got out just before it basically destroyed us. Then I would plunge back in a couple of years later, and I think I'm talking about.
Yes,
it's a vision.
I have a family.
Yeah, and so it seemed like I would dive in. Everyone, Kathy would support it. We would be a downhill spiral, and we'd get out in the nick of time. And the other side of the fence was the regular world where I did work very hard as an engineer. An engineering technician. My field was civil engineering.
Wow.
So I spent many years, as a civil engineering assistant. Never got my degree in it, but I did pick up 2 years of college, and it always paid the bills.
Yeah.
There's the beauty.
And explains a lot of the technical expertise that you have.
Well, I just embraced it all this time because it's been a necessity of survival.
Right.
I don't like digging into. I hate reading little manuals. I don't like cell phones to take pic. I don't like anything small. I like computers, but
Yes.
you have to have this technology to survive. And I didn't realize when I first started to dig into the world of computers how important it was going to be later on.
Yeah.
But none of this would be happening had not Kathy, and once again, kind of allowed me to, when money should have been going towards a car or something, we would buy software. When money should have went to a vacation with the kids, it went to an instrument. And so I've been a little selfish that way over the years. I didn't realize it when I was younger, but it was a blessing and a curse at the same time. We're doing this today because we've learned it the hard way. Has it been tough on the family? Yeah, yes. And the kids? Yeah, certainly.
But at this stage, you got some momentum going, and
well, a little momentum. I'm always careful with that word, because this is a humbling business to be in, especially at my age. The rug could be pulled out from underneath your foot in a blink of an eye. Something can happen in a moment's notice. What seems like momentum can become a ball and chain. I mean, you have to just be. I tell you what, today. I would say that it's more of a spiritual journey, than anything else.
Yes,
because I've realized that that's where it's all come from. And I'm not a religious person, mind you.
Yeah,
but I use the word spiritual kind of freely, because you come to a point where you realize that we're not in the driver's seat by any means.
Yes,
and we are at the mercy of a higher power.
Yes.
And we are at the aid of that. That will come to your aid in times of trouble if you live right and you understand that.
Yes.
And I think that this last 17 years has been a result of a spiritual process that we've been mature enough to understand is trying to help us. Our trick has been just to follow through with it.
Yes. Well, there's spiritual things going on in the audience while you guys are up there. I mean, and it's very powerful. It's very powerful.
Thank you. I've heard that over the years many times, and it's humbling just to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't take credit for it. I really don't. And what I mean by that is that we learned early on. We learned to play the instrument, and we learned to do this and that. But all this other stuff that's happened, we didn't do it. We've been part of it. We've been fortunate. We've been blessed. And so this thing that happens, it goes to a higher level when everything totally comes in, and you just have to understand it. That's happening and roll with it.
When I'm sitting in the audience, of course, I'm going to be doing some writing for you, but I don't really sit there and plan. I'm not writing so much. I'm not putting an article together. I'm just listening, basically. And words that come to me, I just write those down and I meditate on them, and that kind of gets the spirit of it. But I'm writing words down like healing and purity.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you something. I mean so much to me. I can't write that down. I mean, I want you to, but it seems like, and I think you'll appreciate this, if I were to say that, it loses something, and it may even go away. It's
coming across. It's coming across. And you even said something like, I mean, when you say reconciliation, well, the ministry of reconciliation, that's the gospel.
Absolutely.
That is the gospel.
Absolutely.
And, you're bringing reconciliation between peoples and the gospels are reconciliation with God through Christ. And that's what hangs it all together. And
I think that's what we've been put here to do. It took a while to figure it out, but the kids early on when they started this, back in about year 2 or 3, and even in their smallest little performances, and we had some little funny little venues, but even then we would just talk a little bit about, well, we're here because we've been reunited with them. Pretty soon the audience would stop and be listening more to the story than almost the music. And then the two became a very powerful little package, and the kids kind of started to call me Pastor Paul, and I go, guys, I don't mind that. I'm not a pastor, but there is a certain.
I have a witness. When I came out last night, I said to my staff, "This guy's a pastor."
Huh. That's very strange.
And we're talking about that. We just both see a great calling on your life.
Well,
and that God's really using this, because there was things happening in the audience. I'm going, wait a minute, I'm in a show. Why is this? Why am I getting these? Why am I getting this? And but we're taking something away. There's a mission going on. There's a message and a mission.
Yes, there truly is, and you have to always follow that. And it's been a very important part of this, because without that mission, it all just turns back into performing. And then you're performing so you can, well, why? Well, so you can get paid. I mean, it loses everything. When you throw the mission into it, you have a sense of purpose and you have a reason to be up there,
right.
And everything else just follows right behind. It just follows. It's always right behind, right. As long as the mission is on track. And that's why we've always included our little story almost everywhere we've gone, and it's never gotten old. Even the kids I've gotten to the point where they say, kind of get the story in their dad, you know.
And which story? Because there's so many stories. That
when I say the story, I'm referring to just our kind of our life's journey, particularly the homecoming, the
yes.
going back to the reservation at a point in the middle of your life, and embracing a new culture and trying to understand now how what the two cultures mean, and being part of both of them. Why you've been given a part of both of these worlds. Why did that happen?
Right.
It really is a unique position to be in, and I find that it's fascinating to this day. I learn more, and I see how many more things can be done with that unique position, because not everybody understands it. Even within our culture, I'm by no means all that popular within our culture. I'm not an outlaw, or I'm not disowned. It's just that many people within our culture still carry what I call a cultural trauma.
Yes.
And I respect that.
Yeah.
Because of the plight of the culture in past years. Right. And I allow that to happen. It's almost genetic, but it certainly is inherited when you're on the reservation full time. It comes through that cycle. It filters in, just like you throw a young child into a family that's from a different nationality, and they'll learn that language without, right, by the time they're 7 or 8, they can speak whatever language that is. Right. That same thing happens on the reservation with that cultural trauma. By the time that child is 7 or 8, it's built into them because it's all around them. Yeah. Now, we come back in at the age of 32, and I don't have that cultural trauma. So yes. I'm pulling something entirely different from the culture, in these past two decades. Right. Yeah. And many in the reservation don't even, and even, so a lot of times within the native culture, the observation is, well, we sure appreciate, you are in a unique position, Paul. We're going to watch you to see what you do with it. Yeah. We're watching you. Yeah. And that's kind of it. It's kind of what it is. I think that I've been given the okay to go out to the world and do this under the watchful eye of the culture, to make sure that I'm not trying to exploit anything. Right. If a bunch of money ever came in, I don't know what I'd do with it. I'd probably have to give it away, because it's just not in the cards for us. I mean, it's not. Or set up a foundation or something, because our little reservation, it's almost, we've talked about this before. If all of a sudden this big fancy home pops up on a reservation, you'll never survive. Oh. It just can't be. You have to be part of those people. You have to be part of I don't mean to say those people, I should correct that. You have to be part of your people. You see what I'm saying? Right. And you've talked a lot about, doing things and like at the end, the eagle feather dance, you obtain permission of the elders. And who are the elders of the Brulé, the Brule elders? Yeah. I feel like if we got the approval of our elders back home in our little community, that's all that we can hope for. Uh-huh. You'll never get that unanimously across from tribe to tribe. There's too many differences of tradition, too many differences in the meanings of these things. You have to just go with your own. I mentioned there's over 550 recognized tribes, and there's really a lot of variations in many things. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to be concerned about your own little community. Mm-hmm. And could you give me a little rerun of the significance of the eagle feather also? Yeah. When they're doing this, mm-hmm. Is it like a blessing? You could look at it that way. Mm-hmm. That's how we see it. It's kind of like you're extending out the spirit, and the eagle feather is something that is a physical thing that we can touch and hold. And the eagle was the sacred thing. It was a sacred animal. And who are we to say that it's not sacred to this day? It is the highest soaring of all of the winged creatures. Mm-hmm. And our stories and legends have always said that it was the carrier of prayers and communications between humans and the Creator. And so that was just an acknowledgement for that animal. And it was just respected in a special way to this day it is. And those feathers have a real special meaning. They're handled very, very carefully. You'll find if you could really come deep behind the scenes sometime, you'd find that those guys take very special care of those feathers. They're placed in a red felt, wrapped, when not being used, put into containers, never allowed to touch the ground, transported carefully. Even the process of obtaining an eagle feather is not an easy chore. As an enrolled member of a tribe, you're entitled to your eagle feathers, but the process is lengthy. You apply for them and you receive them, and if you take them across borders, you have to have papers for them and all kinds of things. But they're very important to our culture. They're used in prayer. They're used in ceremony. That's why I mentioned they're very seldom used socially. So we're in a different spot with what we're doing. We're entertaining to a certain extent. We're performing. It's not a ceremony. So that's why I say I always have to have permission to do some of these things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be open targets to somebody saying, these guys they're even taking our sacred eagle feathers out just so they can entertain.
Yeah.
But it's really not the reason why we have them there.
Back to the music, the comparison, if you can kind of just go deep with me on the comparison here.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw some similarities in what reminded me, the music is totally different, but Frank Zappa, just the way that because I saw Frank Zappa live back in the day, and just his interaction with musicians was kind of unique. And I saw some similarities here that the music, you were the father of the music, but everybody was doing their own thing, but there was a reference, but there was a mutual respect on both sides, and nobody was like intimidated by. I don't know. It's hard to put into words, but I saw something there, and then of course you have rock influence, maybe a little. You don't even want to say it, but a new age. But there's just all this that's in this. So let's hear from you.
Well, I have been trying to categorize this for years, and I honestly have never been successful at it.
We can just talk about influences. What kind of influences do you hear in your music? Where's your inspiration? Let's put it that way.
I think my most powerful, and I've been inspired by a lot of these different styles of music, but I think the more powerful inspirations have certainly come from once again from the rock arena. Groups like Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Groups like Deep Purple.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, these were when I was in my teens, Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, The Who was just coming onto the scene.
Genesis, maybe?
Genesis was out there. These were all groups that were Alice Cooper. They dabbled in music that you went, wow, that music really.
It was big music, powerful.
Yeah, I can remember as a kid going to parties. These weren't drug parties, but just parties. I remember that my friend of mine that got his first quad stereo. Do you remember those days, the quad stereo?
Yes.
And he set the stereo up in his living room. We all just came over and he popped on some music, and we're all sitting there going, man. And that's when first time I went, I used to listen to this, on my little home stereo, it sounds kind of the same on yours, but all of a sudden this group is like off the chart. And It was all of a sudden, then we realized that now some of this music, because of the way it was produced and minor keys and big heavy power chords and certain riffs, they just grabbed you. And so I realized that there's a great power to music, and it can be used both ways. I mean, there again, it's just, you got to be careful how you use it, because it's a powerful thing combined with the right message again.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool.
I half expected that you had played with some, huge bands, and that you even might have had a huge music career. Because when you came off and did the solo, I mean, I'm going, you know what? This is awesome stuff. This is, Gordon Lightfoot on steroids or whatever, but better than Gordon Lightfoot, and better and not dated. I mean, you put on a Gordon Lightfoot now and it's great, but it's 70s, but yours is not dated, and something about the voice and the style. And so I wonder if you had a big solo career behind you already, or
I know I haven't. I've been a struggling musician my entire career, and for the most part underground.
Yeah.
Brulé we've had some fun. We've had some recognition. Most of it came back in my 20s, and it was our little rock bands. They did well regionally. I would say that we had good regional careers for short periods of time. We even owned our own nightclub at one point. And I say we, Kathy and I. So we were the house band in our own club, and that was fun.
Yeah.
And it was fun to have a little club packed full of 250 people. It was our capacity audience, jammed in, dancing, everybody having fun.
Yeah.
Back in those days. It's all changed. And that live music era is really over. Never was to come back. At least I haven't seen it come back yet. But I would say that just being allowed to, here's something that I think is a contributing factor. I'm 55 years old, and I don't mind saying that.
Well, I'm 60, so I don't mind saying
There
that.
we go. When you think about this, in many ways, it's like the career is just getting kind of off the ground right now. But everybody else, I don't know anybody else. I mean, any of my friends or anybody I've looked to or turned to in music, their careers are at least in their secondary and third stages. And they're going out doing the oldies circuit, and they're going out redoing their hit songs. Nobody's starting out at 55. But yet I feel like we're just getting going.
Yeah.
And when you start with all that background, think about it. It really is. That's a contributing factor to what's happening right now. You have so much of a foundation to pull from. I mean, maybe and I appreciate that the compliment for that solo song. The solo song had never been performed until about a month ago. That song really has been what I call, it's been brewing for 15 years.
Yeah.
That song was written 15 years ago, and it's been in the can. Never had a home because we didn't fit into our little art show circuit yet. Even my little record deal I had when I first started out, Brulé, which was with a new age kind of a label, and all he wanted instrumental music, no vocal music. Then don't give me no vocals, no, just instrumental. And that instrumental's working, so give me another instrumental music. Give me one more instrumental CD, but no vocals. So there was no reason for doing them. But yet, some things I couldn't express without some words in there. I found that instrumental music, you can say a lot without words. That taught me a discipline, and it taught me to really work on a melody. But every once in a while, you just got to have that spoken word. And so the song Dakota Rainstorm just never had its place until just Tweaking the Branson. So there you have it. It's just all these elements kind of waiting to be. Yeah, it's just you have to be super patient.
and you're so. Tell me what Brulé, this show. I mean, this show looks like a very solid show that's fine tuned and almost an institution, and very fresh and exciting. Has it been around a long time? Have you been touring or a lot? Or?
It's been developing for years.
Uh-huh.
That's the best way for me to put it. It's been developing for years. Once again, this is our 17th season. From the very beginning, matter of fact, Kathy will tell you that she remembers when we had our homecoming, the reunion. When we went back, I tell a little story about going back to the regular world. We were back in the regular workforce for a year, but by then we were goners. We had to get back to the culture. We finally just drove out there and immersed ourselves and moved on to the reg. But while that was happening, I started to kind of visualize the whole thing. And Kathy still has pictures. I don't have them with me right now, but I would do sketches. I started going, I couldn't get in my head, and I started drawing a stage with two big teepees out on the stage, a drummer up there, a whole band, dancers, and I thought, and that picture was sketched out almost the first year, but it's just now. I mean, and we tried doing it almost every year, but there wasn't enough money. We couldn't even buy our first teepee until I was in the 7th year, because a teepee, if you buy a teepee, they're $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 for the poles, the canvas, and all that. So we always wanted a teepee. Now we can't afford it yet this year. Kathy had to, and we're just surviving this whole time by selling CDs over our table, playing, shaking hands. Hello, love you. Here's a CD. Can I sign it for you? That was our livelihood, and it has been almost just till this time. And when you that system up, you can only grow so much. So you have to, it's got to be just very gradual. So we little by little began to get the equipment we needed, began to notice dancers that stood out above others, ask them if they would come and dance. Many times we would just have one dancer. There'd be three. We'd have a little 3-piece group: Nicole, myself, and one guy on traditional drum, and one dancer. And we'd struggle to get enough money to pay that fourth person. And then finally we'd have 2 dancers, and now we had a little bit bigger band. And then there'd be 3 dancers, and then we'd have a tougher year, and then you're down to just 3-piece again. And it built back up to 2. And finally it began to take a shape, the form that you're seeing. I would say that it's been just maybe in the last 5 years that what we call our full stage production began to solidify, and we had a team of people that could do the job. You talk about a difficult thing trying to find the people for this show that that you saw on stage last night. Almost, I just don't know if I could ever recreate it. I don't know if there's enough really. What I mean by that is even these dancers, they need to be professional. Because most of our dancers, most of the powwow dancers have no theatrical experience. They have they really have, what's the word? The work ethic is so different from what we're used to in mainstream America. So the idea of showing up on time to a concert, being prepared, knowing the set list, being ready for the cues, it doesn't register. But to find those that have got that experience or desire or an unusual work ethic for the culture and a good spirit, represent the family, represent Brulé. I would say for every one dancer that you see on the stage, we've talked to or considered 1,000 others. And that's not unfair to say that. So you have kind of what you end up with is kind of the cream of the crop,
right?
Maybe across the country. I don't know. And this is the same with the band. The band we've had other band members come through here. It isn't just into the family's always been the core. Shane and Nicole, myself and Kathy. But we've had many other musicians come in. They come in and they come in for a period of time and they've contributed and they move on. Nobody's really looked at it as a long-term thing. And so the band even has been tough to develop. So even our drummer, I can't believe the years I looked for the right drummer to put into, and not the traditional drummer, but the kit drummer. It was a 7-year search before we came across Kurt and we'd met and we'd had an association. It was a long process. It was a long courtship. And finally it just worked out just this last year. So the band that you see up there it's really evolved from the very beginning till really just this year.
So what kind of places have you played before?
We've played in almost every conceivable except bars. We haven't had to go back into the bars, which is almost a blessing. I spent my whole first half of my life in clubs and bars. That's just where you went to survive. Now this second half has been, and my wife gets the credit for keeping us going, but she's used kind of the art show circuit, cultural events, any place where people would gather. We even probably had a strong foundation by playing in shopping malls. That was a big thing for us. When we discovered that could be done, it opened up a whole floodgate of possibilities because there's malls everywhere in the world. And malls always have people in them. And if they'll let you come in and sit up in the corner, keep in mind, you don't get paid for it. You even pay a little rent to get that little spot. They call you a weekend vendor. But once you know how to do it and you understand the politics and you're kind to your surrounding, boom, you've got something that you can do from one city to the next. And if you want to do it, if that is your only circuit, I told the kids, I said, that circuit is never going to go away. You can always survive in that circuit, although it's grinding. It's very hard because we'd play from 10 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And do half-hour sets, shake hands, half-hour sets, shake hands, half-hour meet, and just sell CDs all day long.
To me, this show is something that Broadway, why not?
Well, I think
they'd love it.
I've always thought big. I've always thought big. I guess that's always part of the deal. You have to think big in this world. The reality is that it isn't gonna end up somewhere overnight.
Right.
It's going to go through steps. It might be that Branson is a step to somewhere else. Maybe it is Broadway. I don't know. I feel like it is building. But I just know it's been hard, and it's the two-edged sword scenario that we talked about earlier. When you have a unique act or a unique sound or a unique show, which then maybe we have all parts of all three of those, that is part of your beauty and your uniqueness. The hard part is the rest of the world is not. They're going on like this, like we're not quite sure what to do with this.
Well, sometimes it's a little, how it works both ways where you say, and in fact, I love that what you were saying, because that was a conversation I had with somebody like literally 2 days ago, that no matter what we have built up, and for me, it's been public relations for several years and everything, it could disappear in a second.
Oh, yeah.
Just one little thing can go wrong and it's over, 15 years, 17 years of work. And we were talking about that. We live by faith. We live trusting God. Okay, He'll take care of us. If this falls, then, He'll feed us by the ravens. The scriptures say that, if you put your trust in Him. But on the other hand, it can change the other way too. like that. I mean, if you hear the story of the Irish dancing, the Michael Flatley and River Dance, yeah. I mean, it was very obscure and fighting to stay alive, but it gets this PBS special, and the whole world goes nuts. Instantly.
You have to be on guard. Because it can come along, and you've got to be prepared. I've always taught the kids, I think the kids are mature enough right now that if something did come along, that we can handle it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's part of what's going on. I think if there would have been a big push, a big blast, a big rise, a big opportunity, even 10 years ago, I don't think we could have dealt with it quite right.
Now, what is your connection to RFD? You have a show, and do they show this in the show on RFD TV?
Well, it's a little different than that. I'll play you a little part before we go.
Okay, yeah.
It's the show program is called Hidden Heritage.
Yeah,
that's also our book title. I'm gonna get you a copy of our book before you go.
Oh yeah.
And the book, the show Hidden Heritage is kind of spin-offs of us traveling across the country. And we discover these neat little stories, people, places, all dealing with positive things from Native America. So that's what the series Hidden Heritage is about. So each little episode is us, hello, I'm Paul LaRoche, host of Hidden Heritage, as one of the Native American children adopted at birth. We have a little short story to share with you tonight. As we traveled across the country 3 years ago, we met this very interesting elder. Here's his story. And here's your episode.
Yeah.
And it just goes on from week to week. And people have found it fascinating. It's kind of gaining a little cult following. And I enjoy it. And the whole time you're bringing another part of Native America out to the world that hasn't been presented before.
Well, to elaborate on my one point, which ties in with what you said, I remember reading listening to an interview with Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, and they were talking about the early days of the Beatles. And they said they were very thankful that they had several years playing small clubs and developing as people, as friends, as a band, dealing with different situations.
Yeah.
So that, but when it went nuts, they were prepared.
They were prepared for it.
Yeah.
And maybe they were never prepared for how big it really became in the end. But I do understand that. And I think that I think that I could say something similar to that. I always feel like at this time now, I think that for the last 6 months, I do have this kind of little inner feeling that I feel good about the show. And if we got a call to go play on Letterman or something, I go, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's have fun.
Yeah.
Everybody just do what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And
somebody could see you on PBS. You could do a PBS special, and then the whole thing would be just like a river dance thing, where everybody would want the DVD.
Well, I tell you what, if somebody would have told me even 5 years ago that if somebody would say, just be patient. This television network that nobody knows about is going to come along, and they're going to be like your label. I'd go, you got to be kidding me. I don't believe you. Think about it. We've got that little story too. We've knocked on all the doors. We talked to managers and agents, booking agents. We talked to the big the big APA entertainment companies. Everybody was like, we just don't quite get it, but we like what you're doing. Come back later. Nobody could really quite get it. The record companies, I did have this little obscure label that we got our CDs out on early days, but it was and we finally just became independent, which was the best move for us. And no label. We even auditioned for a label just a year and a half ago, a big one out of Nashville. And we don't know what to do with you. Just this last year and a half, still going on. Finally, along comes RFD TV, a new cable network with a new concept, embracing rural America, the thing that everybody else forgot about.
Yeah.
And the owner of RFD TV says to himself, I think Native America should be in with rural America.
Oh, yeah.
And in his vision, he runs across Brulé at a little concert in Omaha and literally stopped me and Kathy one day, asked for a meeting, and he just said, I like what you guys are doing. I want to help you. How would you feel about making your own TV show? And we just went, fun. How do you do it? And he goes, well, I'll help you a little bit. Get started. I said, there we are. And the TV show has just been, the TV show has given us a chance to reach, well, our last little Nielsen survey was 95,000 viewers on Monday evening between 8 and 8:30.
Wow. And
it goes around the world. So a label could have never done that for you. All of a sudden, RFD TV has this theater. Patrick goes, your show is going good. How about come on down to the theater to play? Place is yours. Okay. What,
Yeah.
What do you guys think about going to the Tournament of Roses parade here? First time ever a Native American group's going to be in it. Okay. See where I'm going with that? It's just the stuff that you couldn't have dreamt of. Still, not an easy road. We're still new in town. We're struggling to build up our following. And we have the appearances of kind of just, trying to kind of stumbling a little bit, getting going. But there again, I think that this is designed to kind of work like this. We're learning a lot about marketing, what has to happen in this town. We've made a few changes. Even Micah coming in was the best thing that's happened, but that wouldn't have happened had we not had a few little stumbling blocks the first 3 months here. But we've learned from it, and now we got a stronger team.
Yeah,
I feel much better about going into the second half of the year, and if we make it into next year, God willing, I see it that I think we could. I think we could establish a foundation here. I think it'll take a few years, but we're patient at this point. We can make it that far if God, good Lord, keeps us alive.
Yeah. It does take a few years, but well, I want to get a couple pictures. Can I do that?
Sure.
And is there anything that you would like me to cover that we haven't touched on yet?
Oh, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and you've made some wonderful observations. Really, I think that at this point, it's important to acknowledge my wife Kathy's role in this. She's been very important part of this, and she's had the real intuition. And you may have heard my little thing during the show about the seventh direction. She's the one that's been able to follow that internal voice. Now,
let's do those 7 directions again, because
north, south, east, and west, and each have their own color. And there's red, yellow, black, and white. It doesn't matter which one's which, but so the 4 directions, the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. We walk in one of those directions every moment. Now the next 2 are above and below, and they have their color too. Green is Mother Earth, and blue is Father Sky. But yeah, might say Father Sky and Mother Earth. And those directions are above and below. And I always say that that's a spiritual direction because you can't walk that. So it becomes positive and negative or good and bad. And that's how the universe is. And the 7th direction is the most important one. That's the direction from within. That's the little internal voice guidance mechanism. I believe that's really the communication with the higher power.
Yeah,
trying to communicate with you. And when you recognize all of those directions, just think of that. I had an elder once tell me that's how I think about it. Think of one of our old chiefs or leaders sitting there up in the prairies of South Dakota, scratching his chin going, it's starting to get kind of cold. It's only August 17th, but maybe we should move the camp south a little early this year. If winter comes, we don't have enough food and everyone's going to die. He goes, but if we take off too soon, it might be hot down there and we're going to have the buffalo herds aren't going to be there. How do I figure? Somebody help me with this. Can somebody, no, Farmer's Almanac's not here yet. No computers, no internet. How do I make this decision? How do I decide that? They would find a place of tranquility and they would meditate and they would use that inner mechanism and wait for that answer to come. And it would always come and it would never be off.
Yeah.
You had to listen to it though.
Yeah.
So the answers are there for all of us. They always have. We can always communicate with
I'm getting from that. I mean, you look at this. I mean, this is basically, relationship. You're talking about reconciliation between God and man, man and man, and Christ is what reconciles.
There it is. And that's a universal image right there. That's why some things are just truths that we can't make them up. We can't deny them.
And I remember I caught a little statement. It was in a little different order, but when you're talking about the circle of life and the things that are eternal, you said faith, hope, and love. That's a scripture. These things remain. It's in Romans where these things, heaven and earth will pass away, but there's certain things that will not pass away. Faith, hope, and love.
Always be with us.
Yeah. So it's awesome stuff.
Well, it's been a big turn. I was also an altar boy when I was a kid, so that's still with me today too. And my 7 years as a church organist didn't hurt either. So there's a little bit of that. I still would have to sit down if I saw a beautiful pipe organ. I'd have to sit down and just fire it up, play a couple bars of "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God" or something. So, well, there we go.
That's great. Let me get some pictures.
Yeah.
And